The fate of Endius rests with the myriad of forces at the Empire's command. A single shot fired by the cult of the marksman can end a rebellion before it begins. The Titan core can grind entire worlds to powder. The Ordor Chesia can cast the holy word of Vitalian to even the darkest corners of the galaxy. But of all the armies to have ever raised their weapons and banners in the defense of Enderius, there is one above all through which the destiny of the Empire will be decided. Each day on 1,000 worlds, women and men, ordinary citizens of Enderius, depart their homes, often never to return. They could be sent to the front lines of wars beyond number and against eldritch creatures, immortal warriors, and the powers of hell itself expected to hold the line. They were once slaughtered in the ruins of once proud cities, in the depths of forgotten battlefields, and to the laughter of thirsty gods, but for 3,000 years that line has held. For 3,000 years, one force in the galaxy has stood against the enemies of Enderius and spoken to them in the language of fire. Each day on 1,000 worlds, women and men, ordinary citizens of Enderius, depart their homes so they might fight for humanity as soldiers in the Stellaris Millitas, the Enderium Army. The scale and complexity of the Enderium Army rival that of the Empire itself. It is the largest coordinated fighting force in the galaxy, serving as the first and often only line of defense against the innumerable powers that threaten the continued existence of the nation. While it is famous for the vast numbers of tanks, aircraft, and artillery under its command, at its core, it is composed of countless billions of mortal soldiers, organized into hundreds of thousands of divisions. The recruitment of these divisions is among the most pivotal duties assigned to every Enderium commander, planetary overseer, or local governor. According to the law of the Imperialists, every world under its authority must maintain a standing army to preserve the planetary government and deter any form of internal insurrection or foreign invasion. Each of these planetary garrison forces exists as its own individual body, free to defend their own world and enforce standards as they see fit, provided they contribute their number to serve the wider Empire and join the Enderium Army. The method by which these troops are recruited varies significantly from sector to sector and planet to planet. The garrison forces of many worlds are little more than nomadic tribesmen or condemned criminals, and selection for service within the garrison forces is often done under threat of summary execution. Other planets might have well-established professional standing armies who view recruitment into the army as a noble, heroic pursuit. However, the individuals and units selected to join the Enderium Army are chosen. Their quality reflects on that world's ruler. Should a regiment provided to the military be of insufficient quality, the status of even a planetary governor is immediately forfeit. For this reason, the soldiers selected for the Stellaris Millitas tend to be drawn from the best troops of any planetary garrison. Even so, the composition and number of divisions drawn from each planet are wildly diverse. A highly industrialized foundry world with 1 trillion Enderium citizens might be required to provide hundreds of millions of soldiers, tens of millions of tanks, and other mechanized equipment. These would be supplemented by professional uniforms, munitions, replacement parts, and every manner of material required to outfit and sustain a force of that size. An agricultural or medieval world, by contrast, might have a significantly lower military tribute, providing as little as 1 million men and 100,000 cavalry. Such soldiers may lack even the most rudimentary equipment and possess little experience handling anything more complex than a windmill. This general disparity within the army makes any attempt at standardization quite difficult, but not impossible due to an ever-expanding logistical network. Every regiment is equipped in the manner of their homeworld, and many such worlds have grown famous for the conduct of their soldiers. Prized by even the homeworld as the epitome of the Stellaris Millitas are the 12th Amagos Guard. The divisions of Amagos are equipped with the highest standards of gear available, and the martial culture of their homeworld has imbued every soldier with a natural affinity for life in military service. Amagos itself is the largest world that the moon of Enderius orbits around, and was the first world to be colonized by the nation. That memory has served the Imperialists as much in death as in life. Factory worlds across the galaxy produce equipment for the Enderium Army to Amagos specifications, and countless divisions are trained and deployed in the fashion of their Amagos brethren. Equally legendary, if less ubiquitous regiments, are raised on worlds spanning the breadth of the Imperium.
The Muscovia 13th Sappers are said to be as inexorable as the winter itself, ruthless as the bitter frost, and as certain as death. They have acquired an infamous reputation for their thundering artillery barrages, combined with waves of charging infantry.
The Scythian 71st Winter Riders are the masters of Arctic warfare, viewed by outsiders as somehow impervious to harsh conditions or the value of human life.
Fueled by the forges of their urban world Haneri, the divisions of the Feilderhallen Heavy Armor 15. Highly mechanized and mobile, the Feilderhallen has an unequaled number of heavy tanks and armored personnel carriers in their service, and time again have charged across the wastelands of combat zones supported in the skies above by gunships and fighter aircraft.
The Desert Raiders of Castilia, by contrast, are unequaled within the army for their guerrilla tactics. Evasive and opportunistic, they have perfected the doctrine of hit-and-run warfare, harassing their opponents without mercy before disappearing into the dust kicked up by their assaults.
The Brickian silver shields are widely derided for their stiff and unforgiving demeanor, ridiculed as more troubled with maintaining their brightly colored uniforms and marching in perfect formation than the more pragmatic concerns of soldiery. Such discipline is an absolute necessity on their homeworld, however, and in battle their iron resolve makes them cold-blooded killers. They will hold their ground at any cost, laying waste to the enemy with perfectly disciplined fire.
Hemming from the rich world of Festus, the divisions of the 43rd Siege Breakers are heavily armored and equipped. The Siege Breakers have an unequaled proficiency in siegecraft and fortification in their service, and have been instrumental in the destruction of enemy fortresses. Time and time again have charged bastions and walls, supported by their sappers and engineers.
Every division in the Stellaris Millitas, regardless of their homeworld, possesses some level of fatalism, but none can match the notoriously grim warriors of the 14th Minkata Statics. Once a prosperous modern world, Minkata today is an atomic wasteland, the result of a rebellion against Enderius, for which its soldiers must now atone. They are synonymous with their heavy dark green greatcoats and gas masks, rarely removing them, even to eat or drink. They specialize in wars of attrition and brutal trench warfare, where their willingness to die for the battalion exceeds any other consideration. But in the minds of many across the Imperium, Aachen alone is a worthy successor to Amagos. It is a martial world of unrelenting militarism, where every plant, animal and insect exists to support the creation of military units. Lombardi have a well-deserved reputation as the deadliest warfare experts in the galaxy, as even the bloodiest battle might be a favorable reprieve compared to life on their homeworld. Large orchestrated operations are their particular specialty, along with extensive use of naval, air and theatre-level weaponry. They also excel at combined arms doctrine and pitched battles, with long campaigns. There are countless other regiments of renown within the Stellaris Millitas, the 44th Death's Head, the 3rd Victorian Grenadiers, or the 21st Edris's Cuirassiers. But for every world or division honored for the heroism and dedication of its soldiers, dozens more remain unsung and forgotten, save by the Vitalian himself. Regardless of their origin, every regiment is subordinate to the Senatorius Militas. In theory, this individual passes on the dictates of the Enderium Senate to the commander of each regiononum, who in turn holds authority and responsibility for vast swaths of the empire. In practice, the Senatorius Militas is primarily a political position, more concerned with overseeing the bureaucracy of the Logistica Corps and devoted to the general administration, personnel assignment, supply, and military logistics of the Enderium Army, rather than any direct orders to its armies. Individual commanders vary tremendously in their approach. Some command from miles behind the front lines, or from the relative safety of low orbit. Others are present where the fighting is thickest, leading their soldiers through example. In other cases, Stellaris Millitas forces are subordinate to other branches of the Enderium military. It is not uncommon for Enderium divisions to supplement the legions of the mobile infantry, the security forces of the colonial corps, or any other force as required. In rare instances, such as during an imperial crusade or an extraordinary threat to the entire empire, a commander within the Stellaris militias might be granted the title of Dominus. This individual is second only to the Primarch and the supreme authority over every Enderium military force within their area of operations. There is never more than one Dominus within the Imperialis at any one time, and many who are granted it prefer to instead be known as a High Legatus, rather than claim the term of the very first Dominus and Regent Magnus. The organizational structures of the Enderium Army are defined by the ancient text known as the Strategiki Imperica. Its knowledge stretches back into antiquity, and many of its teachings predate the rule of Battalion, the Republic, and the unification of Endius. At its most basic tenets, the Strategiki Imperica groups squads together based on their specialization. Infantry platoons comprise infantry companies, which in turn make up infantry regiments and eventually divisions. Tank, cavalry, artillery, and support regiments are structured in this same manner. Regiments together, therefore, complement each other's strengths and weaknesses, ensuring that the army as a whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Like every other facet of the Enderium Army, the composition of its divisions again varies mildly. When facing the massed numbers of a Brotherhood of Iron or the hit-and-fade tactics of the Knights of Numerium, the standardized methods of organization lose their effectiveness, and entire armies must be restructured to best combat these threats. More varied and versatile deployments are often favored by local commanders. A common saying is that the only true standardized piece of imperial equipment issued to every regiment is a vigil. Such a thing would never be said within their presence, however, for it is the task of these political and spiritual officers to maintain the morale and loyalty of their troops, doing so typically at gunpoint. A vigil has the authority to overrule even the commanding officer of a division, and can inspire their charges to accomplish what might have seemed impossible. Neither blazing heat nor frigid cold impedes its effectiveness. It is simple and reliable, a perfect metaphor for the Enderium Army. The modern Stellaris Millitas began as the royal service. The force was first used by the first king Etrimitus of Clan Darius during the Wars of Unification on ancient Endius, and later to support the advances of the colonization effort, and eventually it was reformed into the Enderium service during the Great Sector Wars under the Republic. During this time, the force commanded land, air, and space assets, with no differentiation between the space-based and ground-based branches of the service. The betrayal by the Bannerlord Pharisee and the subsequent civil war he unleashed forever tarnished the reputation of the army. Unnumbered divisions joined the traitor legion, spreading death and corruption across the empire. When it was reformed as the Enderium Army, all naval assets were stripped from its command and organized into the complementary Enderium Navy. With neither force able to mount a campaign without the support of the other, the threat of another large-scale rebellion was, in theory, removed. In all the ages since, the Enderium Army has remained the backbone of the Imperalis' defense. Its forces have fought across every battlefield against every foe, enduring the stain of defeat and seizing the exaltation of victory. Its greatest commanders have entered the highest pantheon of imperial heroes, with names like General Vox, Capitan Corridon, Field Marshal Lucian, Magnus Illyria, Suvada Katan, and Anastasia Vasiliev known across the entire galaxy. It is the name Atticus Creed, however, that is revered above all others. The extent of his deeds, and whether such a man ever existed at all, has been lost to antiquity. But according to legend, at the height of the Great Sector Wars, as the Battle of the Crossroads was collapsing and the system burned beneath the might of the Brotherhood, a single man placed himself between the retreating Enderium Army and the Convent of Iron, the sorcerers, chosen of the blood gods. Some accounts claim it was a heavy fireman of the legionaries or a warrior of the Steel Guard, but every rifleman knows with certainty that he was nothing more than an ordinary man. A mortal soldier who faced down the greatest terror all reality had to offer and died standing. Alien tyrants, immortal intelligences, the blood gods, and the universe itself make a mockery of human life. For against the terrible foes of mankind, a single rifleman alone can do nothing. But a rifleman is never alone. They are deployed into battle alongside their fire teams, their squads and sections, their platoons, companies, regiments, and divisions. Their armies cover entire continents, entire worlds. Behind them roar the engines of battle tanks bearing the names of immortal heroes, formations of war machines of such scale and power that entire mountains might be ground to dust beneath their treads. Overhead, the skies are filled with gunships and attack craft, unleashing such fury that the sun itself is concealed behind the grey smoke of rocket propellant. At night, entire horizons are lit with the fires of heavy guns, a declaration to the enemies of Enderius that they have come here to die. But should every world fall, every fortress be overrun, and the gates of Enderius defended by the last rifleman in the Empire, they will still not stand alone. The will of Vitalian is with all who fight in his name, and while no army is big enough to conquer the galaxy, faith alone can overturn the universe.